Hey gorgeous. So I'm going to do the reverse of last time and talk wedding stuff first and then life stuff after that. So first things first, I bought some charms to make cake pulls. That's a southern tradition, I believe. I just saw it online and I thought it was cute. But basically you get a cake and you have these little charms and they all mean something. I forget what they all are, I wrote them down. But everybody pulls a charm out from under the cake. The way I understand it, you put the charms down and then you put like parchment paper and then like cake above it, and everybody grabs a ribbon that a charm is attached to and they pull it out. So it's not super messy and not like getting cake everywhere. You don't like bake them into the cake or anything. But it seemed like a cute idea, so we're gonna do that for my bachelorette party. So me and my maid of honor are gonna get together and she's gonna help me make a cake and we're gonna put the charms under them. And I think it'll just be a fun like activity where we can all go around and be like, oh, what's your charm mean? I also finished, I think this might have been last week already, I can't remember. I finished all of the wedding speeches. So I got my vows written, I've got my rehearsal dinner speech and my reception speech all finished. I'm like halfway through my letter to Jake that we're gonna read the day of the wedding, but that one I'm probably gonna go a lot more in depth. It's gonna be a lot longer than all the other stuff. So it's stuff where I'm pretty like okay with how it's looking right now. I'll probably edit it and fix it, but it's one less thing to stress about. So that's awesome. I guess this is toeing the line a little bit. I had an orthodontist appointment, a little checkup, and we made my next appointment is going to be 3 days before the wedding, and they're going to take all these attachments off. And they said they cleared me to wear my trays for only like 12 hours that day, so I could just keep them out for 12 hours, which is awesome. It's enough time for pictures and like whatever snacking I'll be doing the morning of and lunch and everything, because I didn't plan to take them out until the photographer got there at noon. But if like I could take them out more, that'd be great, because then I can make sure I eat on my wedding day, because I know it's a huge thing. People say they don't eat on their wedding day, so I'm gonna make sure I do that. Which is, the hotel has breakfast and there's a Jimmy John's right in the parking lot of our hotel, so that's our plan. I do have a dental appointment scheduled for a cleaning, but it's after the wedding. So I'm gonna see if I can call in and ask if there's anything free in like those 2 days after I get my attachments off, but before the wedding. So my mouth is feeling fresh for the day of. And if I can't, it's whatever, but I would like to try if I can. I don't know if that's a weird ask to be like, oh hey, if anyone cancels, let me know. But we'll see. It'll be my Hail Mary. Oh, the next thing is we're having a little bit of a choreographing struggle with our first dance. We only have a couple weeks left. And this is more on me. I'm getting frustrated because I'm trying to make up moves and remind Jake of what the moves are. But whenever we practice, Jake's is there to have a good time. So he starts doing like dumb hoedown moves and he's being silly and he's trying to make me laugh, but it makes me frustrated because I want him to remember the things that we're doing. But we had a little tiff about that. We discussed it and we're planning to try and at least practice like once a week until the wedding happens. And more than that if we don't quite get it. Obviously, I don't care if it's not perfect, but there are a couple things, like I do want to do like one thing where he spins and lifts me up. And I just don't want it to be an awkward thing where we're just like doing this the whole time. Like I don't mind a little bit of a sway, but I don't know. There's like a limit between like cutesy and just looking ridiculous to me. And I just want to figure out where that line is. So we're hosting beer and wine. I think I've mentioned this multiple times because it's the one thing I've stressed about the most is what we're going to do for the bar. Because we get 2 kegs with it, and then they said every bottle of wine is like $26, which is so expensive because I'm used to grabbing my like $3 to $5 wine, like, and I'm fine with it. But we have to pay that, and we figured out what the prices would be for the amount of people we have if everybody comes, which they won't. So it should be a little cheaper than what we're expecting, but it's a number that we can deal with. So that's awesome. I don't know why I crossed my fingers, but yay, that's good. And we also picked our late night snack. They gave us a list of options, and I know like there's a lot of the popular ones are like pizza, and there's a French fry bar, which I thought was super interesting. Maybe it's because we're like kind of close to Canada, so I'm like, ooh, it's like close to a poutine bar, but we decided to just do a popcorn bar, and hopefully we can just get a ton of it because I know popcorn's not the most filling of late night snacks, but It was one of the cheaper options, and also it's our go-to snack at home, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is perfect, because we always just make a bag of popcorn and share it. So it just kind of fits us very well. And some of the other ones too were just kind of weirdly priced, and we didn't understand it. Like, it was, oh, like, it's this much for 25, but it doesn't say if it means, like, is that per 20, like for hamburger sliders, it said, oh, the sliders is this much money for 25. And it's like, is that per 25 guests? Is that per 25 sliders on their own? Like, what's the measurement there? We weren't really sure. Like, how many sliders per person? Just one? Or is it like 2 sliders per person? We were confused about it. One of them was just called salty snacks, and that was priced per pound, and it had no description of what the salty snacks were at all. So we're like, what is this? Obviously we could ask them about it, but we're like, that's a little weird that this is priced per pound, but most of the other things were priced per guest or like a different sort of amount. But it was just, some of it just seemed too messy. Like, a taco bar sounds cool, but it also sounds pretty messy, and I don't like ground meat, so it just wouldn't have fit for me. I only really like bean tacos, or if it's like, I don't know, chunks of steak or carnitas, like shredded meat. I have a weird aversion to ground meat. Sorry. But yes, we picked our late night snack. It's popcorn. I'm excited about it. So that's good. We still need to figure out exact prices for that too, but we have a good estimate. So that's just one of the last things that we'll have to budget aside from tips. It's nice to finally have numbers to go with this stuff, because we've just been kind of going blind, like, oh yeah, we'll host beer and wine, but we didn't know how much it would be. Or like, oh yeah, we want to have a late night snack, but we had no idea what the pricing was until this week. So now we know, and it's great. We send our invitations a little bit back, and we're slowly getting RSVPs trickling in. So we have 241 guests that we've invited. We currently have 58 yeses, and I think like 5 no's. So that, and I'm sure we have, like, I did the math, and I'm pretty sure we have like 58 more like hard yeses, like where it's family or wedding party, or like the vendors count. And so there's a few where I'm like, they're definitely coming, and there's a few where I'm not sure. That still leaves like 120 people that we aren't sure about, and we're just waiting on them to answer. I don't know. We still have a while. Our RSVP like end date, our cutoff date was a month before the wedding. So we still have time to get them in. It's just like, oh man, I really don't want to have to go after people and be like, hey, go on our website and RSVP, because that just kind of sucks. And I'm sure there might be people who just like want to say no, but they don't. I don't know if they feel bad about it or something, which is fine with me. Any RSVP I'm happy about. I don't care if it's a yes or a no. I mean, you know, some people I'd be disappointed, but I just want to know. It's just nice to know. Because we still need to tell like the cake person if we need less cake. We need to tell the venue if we need less meals, what kind of meals, that sort of thing. I've noticed too, it's very funny, the people who have RSVP'd, I've noticed for the couple, so we've got chicken, fish, and vegetarian, and usually one is picking chicken and one is picking fish, which I think is funny, because that's what Jake and I are doing, because we both loved both meals, so we're like, alright, we're gonna split it. So I'm wondering if everybody else is doing the same thing, or if that's just their preference. I won't really know. I'm sure I'll be way too busy to actually pay attention, but it's exciting to get some RSVPs, even if it's only like, I don't know, 20% of them, something like that. I hung out with my friend Gabby. I guess this is getting more into just normal stuff as opposed to wedding stuff. But we did hang out, we just had a good time, we chatted, and she busted her Cricut out. So now my ceremony book has the stuff on the cover. I forgot to bring it up here, but I'm not gonna go get it. I'll show it in a different video. But it's very cute. I'm very excited about it. It was funny, the transfer paper wasn't working very well, so there were a couple that we had to like painstakingly do by hand to like try and get straight, and I was just glad I have longer nails so I could just like pick it up and like very gingerly put it back down and be like, yes, that's good. But yeah, that was a good time. And I think the last wedding thing is just trip planning. So I looked through everything we have a trip coming up in a couple weeks, and we have that all figured out. All of the accommodations are done. It was originally going to be our honeymoon trip, but logistically it didn't make sense, so we're doing it now rather than later. It's a little bit of a bummer because our mini moon our actual mini moon is not going to be as grand, because our upcoming trip is going to be us going around Lake Superior, which is what his parents did for their honeymoon. So it seemed really fitting. We have a lot of nature-y stuff to see, a lot of places to go, little sights, things that his parents said, you gotta check this out. So it really seems more mini moony, but our actual mini moon is basically us driving, you know, down through Wisconsin. We're gonna go down to Illinois, and then we're gonna go around and come back up, and then go up to our friend's wedding, which I think, though, going to another wedding after our wedding would be like a great way to end up a mini moon, I think. But the in-between stuff is kind of just like, it all just feels like all restaurants. There's not as many scenic things to do. There is some city walking. I love city walking, so I'll be excited about it regardless. And there are state parks. It just doesn't seem like as much because we put so much effort into our original mini moon, and I was like, oh no, we need to put more effort into this. And we also need to still make reservations for that, both logistical ones, like if we want to do like brewery tours, or there's a place that had high tea, we need to call and make a reservation if we want to do that. And we also just need our hotels and stuff. But hopefully we'll do that at our next like wedding planning session during this week. And I guess that's about it. That kind of ties into the non-wedding planning stuff, because I brought my car in. Both of us brought our cars in, actually, because Jake's car was making a weird noise, so he wanted to get checked out, and it was totally fine. It was like something got loose, but it wasn't like a crazy important thing. They just reattached it and it was fine. And we were checking my car out because we use my car for road trips, because Jake's car is like a, I don't know, like a 2004. I'm bad at car types, but it's an older car. My car's a 2015, so we do my car because it has less miles on it. And we're using it for the road trip, so we wanted to rotate my tires, see what we need to do. And for our upcoming trip, it'll be fine, but before our next trip, I'll need an oil change. And potentially before the next trip, or at least before winter, I'll need new tires, because I've had these tires for like 7 or 8 years, because I've never changed them, and they're just ones that came with the car, and they're starting to wear down. So that's an expense I'm not super looking forward to, but it'll keep us safer on the road, and I'm cool with that. And everything else looked fine. My filters were crazy dirty. My filters are always crazy dirty. I know some people say like, oh, that's a ploy, like they're just trying to get money out of you, but they've shown me the filters and they get gross. I do a lot of outdoor parking where I work, so, and I'm always under trees, I feel like. I can't avoid the trees. I love trees, so it's fine, but there's always so many leaves in my car filters, so got those all cleaned out. A friend of mine also hosted a really fun gathering. She did this last year as well. It's basically her whole family, and then she invites some of her friends. But it's mostly a game day, and it's super fun, and I absolutely love it. This is the friend of mine that's doing a reading for us. So first, they have like an old school like ice cream maker where you have to hand crank it. So everyone has to do 50 cranks so we can have ice cream later. So we all took turns doing that. And then after that, there was a... they have giant bananagrams, and so we all get into teams of 4, and someone like runs to the middle, grabs like all these pieces, and then we try to make our little, if you played bananagrams, you know what I mean. You basically try to play Scrabble, but with only the pieces you get, and once you run out of pieces in the middle, then like whoever finished theirs, they win. Which was a bummer, because our first round, we were playing with her grandma. It was me, 2 of my friends, and her grandma, and she was great. Like, we were yelling peel constantly, and that's what you say once you've got all your words together and you don't have any more. You say peel so you can go grab one more and try to add it in. And we said peel so many times, but it was like someone else got the last peel, and so we just lost out on, it felt like a technicality. We were so good the whole time, we just didn't make it in the end. So if you haven't played Bananagrams, try it. Giant Bananagrams is super fun if you have a big crowd, because the gathering was like 20 or 30 people, so it really worked out for the crowd that we had. The next game was one her brother made up, which was also super fun. I guess this is, hey, if you need inspiration for like a wedding game, if you have a decent sized, like a smaller wedding, I guess, like these are some fun ones. I guess you could even do this for a big crowd. This was my favorite part. Well, It was one of the easier games, and it made for good conversation. Basically, her brother would have a statement, and so I'll say one of them was, dogs are better than cats. So that was one of his statements, and on the ground in chalk, he'd written agree or disagree. And if you stood on the word, that meant you agreed very strongly, or you disagreed very strongly, and like the further back, the weaker it was. So like, oh, dogs are better than cats. A lot of people very strongly believed dogs are better than cats. And some people like weakly agreed because they're like, well, my dog is kind of annoying, but you know, I still love him and he's better than a cat. And like I was on like the weak disagree because I would prefer to have a cat, but I'm also not a pet person in general. Like I just don't have pets, so I don't really know. So I was like, well, I guess like if I did have to have a pet, it'd be a cat, but I also don't really want either. So that's where I stood. But yeah, so everybody picked their spot. And then he would come around with like a giant spoon that he used as like a fake microphone, and he'd have people try and like argue their case. And some people would move once they heard different arguments. Like one was, oh, Christmas is better than Halloween. And I was like, I strongly agree, I love Christmas. But then someone talked about how commercialized Christmas is and how like everyone's forced to buy a gift and you spend so much money. And that made me think like, oh, well, yeah, because Halloween's great. And then it made me think of like the creativity aspect of like, oh, you get to like come up with your own costume, whereas for Christmas you're just like, where's the list? Someone tell me what you want. I don't know what to get you. Someone tell me what you need, because it's you can be creative with your gifts, obviously, but it's hard for some people like me. It's very difficult for me to figure out gifts. So I was like, oh, I like the creativity aspect, and it helped you have conversations with people. Like, you're just like, what are you? Or like, oh, I know that character. So yeah, so it changed my mind. It was super fun. Like, it's a great icebreaker game too, if you ever need an icebreaker game. We also did a scavenger hunt, which they worked very hard on, and me and my friends won. And my friend actually like made prizes. Like, she had hats that said like Gathering Day, like that was the name of her event, or she had sweatpants that had Gather written on them. It was so cute. I actually grabbed a pair of sweatpants, and like I was like, they're a medium, and I wasn't sure if they were men's or women's, but I was like, well, if they're women's they'll fit me, and if they're men's they'll fit Jake. Now we just have an extra pair of sweatpants, and I thought that was so cool that she put so much effort into it. She goes hard at everything she does. It's really amazing. And then we also played Jeopardy. They had a talent show too, but we left before that because it was getting late, and it was like, you know, an hour drive back to our houses because I carpooled with some people. And it was an amazing time. I loved it. I suppose I gotta end this with like the sad note. We got the news this week that Jake's grandma passed away, which really stinks. It's even harder because the last time, man, huge tonal shift. It's just, I don't know, it sucks. Because the last time we saw her, well, I guess we've seen her, but it was very brief. But her 90th birthday was pre-COVID. And so we all went for her 90th birthday. And she was 93 this year. And she was still living at home. Like, she was very, like, you know, she was like a little slower when she walked, and she, like, but she was still able to live at home by herself. And so it kind of came as a surprise. I can't remember exactly what happened. I know she wasn't feeling well. They brought her to the doctor. And yeah, I think it got to a point where she just kind of stopped eating. And like, things were looking good, and then all of a sudden they were not looking good. And then she passed away. And it made me feel pretty bad because just a couple weeks ago, Jake and I had a little, it was just a mini tiff, but it was about how, like, who's gonna walk the grandparents up the aisle? And I was like, well, your sister should walk your grandma up the aisle. And he's like, well, I should do it. And I was like, okay, well, you could do it, but then you'll have to go back to your parents. And then we had this whole thing until we finally decided, like, who'd walk his grandma up, and now we just don't have to. I don't know, it's such a bummer. And it's like, it's weird because I didn't even know her that well, but I feel so bad for Jake. And like, Jake is just like, well, she was 93, like it was bound to happen eventually, but she was his last grandparent. Like, I still have 3 of my grandparents, and he doesn't have any more grandparents, and that just makes me so sad. And I just wish we could have gone and visited her or something, or I don't know. But we have the funeral this weekend, and it's the weekend after that. Both of us are I'm having a bachelorette, and Jake's having his bachelor party, and it just feels like so wrong to go to a funeral and then like the next week we're gonna be out partying. And I don't know, it just feels like wrong to go to a funeral and the next weekend we're gonna go out and party with our friends, and then just like, I don't know, it's weird, and I don't like it. but there's not really much we can do. Like, I guess things just kind of have to move forward, but it just kind of puts a damper on things. Not like, I feel like that sounds selfish, because it's not like, I'm not just like, oh, I'm sad that she died because now I can't party. Like, that's not how it is. It's just like, I wish this hadn't happened. I wish she could have seen her grandson get married. And, you know, I wish I could have talked to her again since it's been so long. But she was a fun lady. I think she was very funny. She would write, the last time we really heard from her was she get sent Jake a birthday card. And this was in January, so before all this, the war stuff happened. And she pretty much like, oh, like, I hope Putin stops his nonsense, like, no one wins in a war or whatever. And she was very snarky about it. And it was just so funny because it was in a birthday card. But she was just kind of a spitfire when it came to politics. Which, I don't know, yeah. Like I said, I wish I'd talked to her more. Yeah, that's just one of those things you don't expect to happen before a wedding, and you really want everyone to be there and for it to go well. And sometimes you just gotta push forward, even though it's a little difficult. And I guess I don't really have anything enlightening to say. There was a lot of cool stuff that happened this week, and then there's also bad stuff that happens. So just rolling with it and trying to keep things positive, keep spirits high, and enjoy the life we've got, I guess. Okay, that's enough out of me. Bye.